We have some early week information for you guys on Los Angeles Rams game versus the Minnesota Vikings on Monday night. We're going to talk about the details of the game, what time it is, and some of the spread information, all that good stuff. We also have some funny things to discuss in terms of the preparation for the game, all in today's episode of the Rams Digest. I'm your host, Joshua Hidon. If you guys are not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, as 86.3% of you guys still are not subscribed. You're coming, you're watching the videos. We appreciate you watching, but hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any daily Rams content here at the Rams Digest. But let's get into this first bit of news here. Reliable. We talked about this last episode. I was discussing possibly looking into grabbing another running back after the Blake Corum injury, the unfortunate Blake Corum injury news, which obviously I think a lot of people can say after seeing some of the snaps from Ronnie Rivers, maybe you say, he looks good enough to be able to hold it down for at least 5 to 8 carries per game, roughly around there, just to kind of give Kyren Williams his breaks. But for the most part, we're expecting heavy workload for the playoffs for Kyren Williams. So maybe you can go that route, or we can kind of go the old reliable route, as you see here from Rams tapes. I swear, if the Rams hit up Daryl Henderson, since Corum is out this season, it'll be them going back to their old reliable, trusty weapon, Daryl Henderson. For those who don't remember, a couple years ago, Rams had a playoff run. They needed a running back. They went out and got Daryl Henderson off the couch, and he really looked like he was off the couch, but still went for, we're talking about over 100, almost 200 yards, I think, in a couple of his games with the Rams in the playoff run they had. So just kind of a funny tweet to kind of look at, but it is kind of an interesting conversation that I have been thinking about. Is it something the Rams are going to consider? Who knows? We've seen them in the past under Sean McVay, right? Do something like this where you go grab a running back that wasn't on a roster and you try to pick him up. We saw recently Ezekiel Elliott from the Dallas Cowboys after he was waived. He signed with the Los Angeles Chargers. So do the Rams do something like that? I don't know. We'll see. So far, not really any major news on that front, but sometimes these things can happen where you just wake up and all of a sudden the Rams sign a new running back or a new player off of retirement or something of that nature. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in that route. I just thought it was a funny tweet. I did want to kind of acknowledge. I also want to pull up this one right here. This one I think is pretty funny, as the Rams and Rams fans on Twitter are getting ready for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see you soon, Minnesota. And this is just a hilarious tweet, I think, of a clearly AI image of Sean McVay. But why does he actually look like he could be a Viking or was a Viking at some point? Just some funny tweets to kind of acknowledge in preparation for the game versus the Vikings. And it is kind of nice to see on Twitter even, just to see that, or X, if you will, that Rams fans are in positive spirits. I think at the end of the day, the Rams were kind of almost like, it feels like you're playing with house money, right? You didn't really expect to get into the tournament. You didn't really expect to make it to the playoffs. These last few weeks have been a little bit rough in terms of what the team's looking like. So ultimately, I think all Rams fans are on the same page of like, we're here. We're in the playoffs. We'll see what we can do if they beat the Minnesota Vikings, right? That's going to be still, a huge nod to how great they've been playing. And even though it is Sam Darnold and maybe not as scary of a legendary Hall of Fame quarterback name, I do want to acknowledge Sam Darnold has been playing really well. And we'll talk about some Sam Darnold stuff right now in a second, but it's just, it's going to be a positive thing, of course, obviously. We'll all be super excited if the Rams beat the Vikings at home. But I think everyone kind of has this kind of mentality of like, we didn't really expect to even be here, so let's just have a good time and enjoy it while we get here, or while we're here in the playoffs now. We can move on to the next bit of news here, as I just mentioned Sam Darnold's name. So why not talk about him in more detail, as let's discuss this conversation, right? I did mention it last episode. It's Sam Darnold, right? He is still Sam Darnold. I don't mean to put disrespect on Sam Darnold's name, but I think I wanted to acknowledge two things here, the side of both coins here. One, I want to say Sam Darnold is a good quarterback, right? He's shown this year that he can be a good quarterback, and I think he's been bouncing around from team to team, but bad team to team, right? So he hasn't really had a great shake, and maybe it's my USC fandom bias here talking, but I think Sam Darnold never really got a fair shake, so we got to give him a little bit of credit that he's found a good team, seems to have found a home, had a really, really good season this year. Not just a regular okay season. No, he had a really good season this year, and I think we have to acknowledge that. And so I'm bringing this up because we're seeing some things that Kurt Warner had to say about the Minnesota Vikings and their game versus the Detroit Lions, and what it really meant for the Vikings in terms of a lot of people looking at that game saying, you know what? The Vikings aren't that good of a team. They're not that scary, right? And that's what Kurt Warner had to say. He says, I think the first problem we have is putting all of this on Sam Darnold. They got manhandled, the Vikings offensively. The receivers were locked down. There wasn't a lot of separation. I wasn't a fan of some of the play calling, even though I think Kevin O'Donnell always does a great job. And we'll talk and pull up another quote from him as well, legendary Rams quarterback Kurt Warner. But I wanted to acknowledge this, right? Because coming from a quarterback's perspective, a Hall of Fame quarterback's perspective, he didn't want to just kind of put a pause on the Sam Darnold criticism and saying there was much more to that game than just Sam Darnold being Sam Darnold, or he's back to reverting to his old ways, or he's a backup quarterback and that's why we're not scared of him, right? That is not necessarily 100% true. It's not 100% what happened versus Detroit Lions, and I think, to be honest, we have to look at that situation versus the Vikings. And of course, you can acknowledge they didn't look too great, but we do have to kind of slow down a little bit and not just assume that a 14-win team isn't that great and they just been pretending to be good all year long. They've been a good team. And I think you have to give a little more credit to the Detroit Lions and what they were able to do versus the Minnesota Vikings, especially in that second half, running the football, really, really locking down on defense, and especially that defense, that red zone defense that they had, right? Really bothering Sam Darnold, not really allowing him to go through his progressions. Of course, Sam Darnold did miss a couple passes, and there was a couple overthrows and maybe just missed wide open receivers at times, it seemed like. But there was much more to that game. I just want to acknowledge that, because going into this game, I think we have to kind of not just act like this is going to be, again, an easy kind of victory. This is going to be a difficult team. This is a good football team. And if they come in ready to play, the Minnesota Vikings will be a tough out in the playoffs. And we'll continue with the Kurt Warner quote here, as you guys can see what else he said. He says, "I looked at this as a Minnesota Vikings offense issue where they got dominated up front. They got dominated in the back end. Sam didn't play great, but I don't think there was a lot of easy opportunities." And I agree with that. Either that, was a lot of easy opportunities out there. Either that most guys in the league, or even the better quarterbacks in the league, are going to into that situation and having a great game with what Detroit did to him. And I think that's just kind of the point I wanted to kind of emphasize here from Kurt Warner, so you guys can hear it from a legend's mouth and not hear it from just me saying that, hey, look, let's not act like, again, that Sam Darnold's going to come here and be a backup-looking quarterback. He is a good quarterback. He's proven, if anything, to be at least a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. At the bare minimum, deserving of another opportunity to start for a team next year. That's at least what he's trying to do for his career. But he's been having great moments this year, and I think it was just a Detroit kind of out-coaching, outplaying the Minnesota Vikings kind of night, it seemed like. And I think we just got to acknowledge that, we're going into this game. Let's not act like Sam Darnold's going to be an easy victory. This is going to be a difficult battle. If the Rams can get to him and bother him just like Detroit did, then of course we're going to have some success, I think, slowing down this Vikings offense. The Vikings defense has been playing pretty well as well. Yes, they gave up 30-plus points versus the Detroit Lions, but I just wanted to emphasize that it seemed like it was more of a Detroit Lions having a great game, and let's not just look at that Vikings game and say they're going to put up 9 points versus the Rams too, and it's going to be an easy victory for the Rams. So gonna be a battle. It's going to be a battle for sure going into this game. But I do think, maybe you can pull up this here and you guys can see. Let me see. I wanted to pull these numbers up. I will pull this up after. Moving on from that, we'll get into this bit of news here, as we have some early week news for the Rams and the Vikings game, as we officially have a date and time of the wild card game. We also have some general numbers that we can look at to kind of see what the NFL, what Vegas is kind of calling this spread, what the spread's going to look like, the over-under and all that stuff, the betting odds, just so we can kind of paint a picture of what the world is kind of seeing this game as. Is it going to be a blowout from the Vikings? Is that what the world is expecting, or are they expecting a closer game? Let's kind of get into that and pull up that stuff here. As you see here is the official schedule breakdown, if you will, of this weekend's playoff games. We have the wild card weekend officially set in stone. AFC will be playing on Saturday, 4:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. probably Eastern time, I think. Yes. And so we have the Chargers and the Houston Texans. We have the Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. That one's going to be on Prime Video, actually, which is pretty cool. Sunday, we have 3 games, an AFC game and 2 NFC games, as we'll have the Denver Broncos playing the Buffalo Bills, the Green Bay Packers at the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then finally, to finish the weekend off, you have your Los Angeles Rams facing off Monday Night Football. That game, again, let me just pull it up a little bit closer because that's a little far for me. 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We will be seeing the Minnesota Vikings play the Los Angeles Rams Monday Night Football. And it is kind of interesting to see that that the Rams got pushed all the way to Monday. And that was kind of another thing, right? You can kind of talk about with them kind of getting the third seed. You play Sunday, kind of a normal schedule, regularly scheduled program kind of situation. You win, you move on. You're playing on one more day of rest, I guess you could say. Monday you have off. Instead, the Rams have to play on Monday. If they win, they're going to come back the next weekend on Sunday, probably to play on one shorter day of rest. So, interesting. I don't know if I love the Monday game. I'm kind of, I don't know if I've seen Monday games in the past. Maybe I'm just misremembering, but I feel like a Monday playoff game is a little interesting. But nonetheless, the Rams are playing Monday night football. We could pull up here the betting odds so we can see. What are they saying? Are they saying the Rams are going to get killed, or is it going to be a close game? It looks like the Vikings odds, the spread is +1 for Minnesota. The total over-under for the game is 46.5. So kind of a close game. They're really anticipating this game to be almost like a coin toss, right? 1 point spread. Again, this is early in the week, so maybe as injury updates come up and some more statistics get out there, maybe this spread changes. But typically, it doesn't really change too much. So it looks like the world is kind of saying this is going to be a close game, and it does kind of make a little bit of sense. You have the young quarterback who's had a really good season but had his ups and downs in terms of Sam Darnold, and then you have on the other side of things the Los Angeles Rams, a team that you didn't really expect to make the playoffs. They're now sitting here in the playoffs with a 10-win team, and they have the veteran quarterback who's been to the Super Bowl, the veteran head coach who's been to the Super Bowl multiple times. They won a Super Bowl together, and so you have the veteran team versus kind of the younger up-and-coming team that didn't. Both teams really didn't expect to make the playoffs this year, so that's kind of the perspective I think we're sitting at. Very intriguing to see what the world has to say about this game. I'm honestly surprised. I thought it was going to be many people expecting the Vikings to be dominating this game from the outside looking in. Of course, as Rams fans, we know that the Rams have more of a chance than the world maybe was giving them credit for. But right now, it looks like they are giving the Rams a little bit of credit, saying that it's a veteran team that's been here before. They're not going to be easy to beat. And it looks like Minnesota Vikings are a good team, yes, really good, but that game versus Detroit maybe affected their perception of how we see the Minnesota Vikings. So that's going to do it for me on today's episode of the Rams Digest. You guys let me know what you guys think about all those numbers. Again, we're going to be talking about this matchup all week long, all the way up until Monday. You guys let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys are not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. I'm your host, Joshua Hidon. This is the Rams Digest, and I'm out.